Hello and welcome to the Tuesday episode of Stand Up with Pete Dominic. It's February 6th. I've got comedian, lawyer, and cultural commentator, the great JLCauvin, joining me. Nobody does a better Trump impression, and we get a little taste of that and more on today's show. So good. That begins at 28 minutes. I did a long news update with some great audio. Listen to the end for Kamala Harris's very important comments, part of her speech yesterday. But first, it's your headlines. Let's do it. All right, the top news is that on March 22nd and 23rd, I will be assembling an amazing team of brilliant, hilarious, awesome people in Las Vegas, and that can include you. The stand-up community is having its first ever official in-person meeting in Las Vegas, and we will have podcast tapings live for you to sit in the audience for and ask questions about. And during, and then at night, we've got comedy, we've got music. I'll be leading hikes in the morning. You do not want to miss this weekend. Get your tickets right now for PodJam. Go to standupwithpete.com or just check the show notes for this episode, and it should be posted right there at the top. If you still can't find it, you can email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com, and I'll send you the ticket link. Hope to see you in Vegas, March 22nd and 23rd. We have just confirmed Jared Jade Sexton is going to be there. It is getting better each and every day. Buy your tickets. Buy your tickets. All right. Now on to other much less important news. Starting with the climate and weather out in California. Reaching out to my California friends yesterday and hoping to hear from you and making sure you guys are okay, because just a record deluge is how it's being written up. A ferocious atmospheric river dumping rain on California, spawning landslides, flooding roads, causing power outages across the region. I heard from Joby, who's got his power out in Northern California. Ronnie has maybe damage to his solar panels in Southern California. 350,000 homes and businesses in the state without power. The relentless downpour beginning on Monday, stalling over Los Angeles region, where officials are warning the potential for more flooding and mudslides. The rain forecast to continue through today, Tuesday. 8 to 4 inches. 8 to 14 inches of rain, potentially matching Los Angeles' average annual rainfall total of 14 inches in a single day. How can this possibly be? I just don't even understand. I mean, I don't normally talk about the weather, but a weather event like this is really scary, and I know a lot of people are anxious and concerned about how regular this is going to be, and all I can think is, are they going to be able to capture that rain for the future droughts? Are they going to be able to create the largest funnel in the world, which I have suggested to experts many times, a big giant tank? 14 inches of rain. That could perform quite a few miracles out there for the crops and your fake lawns. Wait, what? Anyway, that seems to have to be the big story from yesterday. Also, internationally, the world learned that King Charles was diagnosed with a form of cancer. He's suspending his public engagements to undergo treatment. The 75-year-old sovereign, who began his reign barely 18 months ago, was discharged last week from a London hospital, and he's now being compared to the infamous New York Jets quarterback and anti-vaxxer Aaron Rodgers, who got injured like his very first play of the very first game as a New York Jet. So we really shouldn't make jokes about someone getting ill, but it's hard sometimes to have compassion for people, for anybody, including people who benefited their entire life from colonization. And so I'm going to separate the king from the kingdom and send him and anybody who cares about him good vibes. The royal family, the palace as they refer to it, did not disclose what form of cancer he has, but I'm sure people will find out soon enough. We don't have a king here in America, but a lot of people certainly want one. We do have a Secretary of State. Anthony Blinken arrived yesterday in Saudi Arabia. That's an important story, part of a Middle East trip seeking to prevent a broader war in the region and to rally allies around a possible proposal to release hostages held in Gaza. Biden administration also working toward establishing diplomatic relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Under this proposed deal, the U.S. would offer Saudi Arabia a defense treaty, help a civilian nuclear program, and increase arms sales. In theory, the countries would get Israel to accept conditions for concrete steps towards a Palestinian state in return for Saudi recognition. Well, wait a second, what about the Iranians? See, it's a really challenging problem for Secretary of State Blinken, the Biden administration, every American president, and the world. Speaking of which, let's head to South America, where these deadly wildfires have now killed at least 122 people, hundreds remaining missing after devastating wildfires ripping through the country's Pacific coast. So you've got the California floods, the wildfires in Chile, and an El Nino that has exacerbated droughts and high temperatures throughout parts of South America, creating these kind of conditions experts say ripe for forest fires now. Oh, and if you're not convinced that it's caused by man, it's because you hate scientists and everything that they've been doing for over 30 years, the consensus that they agree on, and now more new science. How about this? A new study of sea sponges is suggesting that humans, we've raised global temperatures by about 1.7 degrees Celsius, not 1.2 degrees Celsius, the most commonly used value. So I'm not sure how much consensus there is around this study, but the New York Times reported it must be a pretty decent one. I'll be talking to Michael Mann real soon about that and so much more. But I'm moving on, which is so hard to do and not talk more and comment about it. But here's what else I have for you. Nikki Haley's campaign said that she had raised $16.5 million in January, her biggest monthly fundraising total to date. And what they said they're going to do with it is apparently throw it in a huge toilet and then hit flush. Top U.S. Treasury Department officials are set to travel to Beijing for economic talks. That seems like a pretty big piece of news. It'll go undercover. The two countries, our countries and theirs, trying to prevent hostilities. I like to see it. And how about this from France? People in Paris voted to triple parking fees for large sport utility vehicles and other heavy cars. I like it. Yeah, I'm for it. I don't know. I'm sorry to those of you that drive the tanks around, but sounds like a good policy to me. Maybe you'll buy less tanks. Because, come on, it's just you in there, right? They're so much more dangerous for everybody else. They make it safer for you. I get it. And you're one kid, like 3 rows back. But how about the rest of us that are just trying to walk to work or something? Getting plowed by your giant M1A1 expedition or whatever it's called. My friends over at CNN have announced another programming move, the third in 5 days is what it seems like. It seems like every single week they've got a new morning show to try to get better ratings and catch up with Morning Joe and the Fox and the Friends. Not to mention the network morning shows, and even your local news has morning shows still sometimes, doesn't it? In Ukraine, the war enters its third year. Ukrainians are finding themselves outmanned and outgunned. After dominating the fight in the first year and battling mostly to a standstill in the second, they've now relinquished the momentum to Russia. Now they're digging in and fighting to hold on. Mortar crews need to ration artillery shells. Troops are being rotated from units in the rear to join undermanned infantry units at the front, and there are shortages of critical supplies needed to repair and maintain Ukraine's armored vehicles. I'm reading from the New York Times. They come in waves. Ukraine goes on defense against a relentless foe. Important reporting from New York Times. Mark Santoro spent time with Ukrainian units on the front line outside of 2 major cities to report that article. So I wanted to mention that as an update with what's happening there. A new filing, no. Special counsel Jack Smith's legal team on Friday rejected disgraced former President Donald Trump's claims of political bias in the classified documents case against him in Florida. And in other legal news, one of the first instigators of the Capitol riot, a Pennsylvania man who marched to the Capitol on January 6, 2021 with a giant flag portraying disgraced former President Donald Trump as Rambo and then led the violent breach of the police, he was convicted on several felony charges last Friday. So another fake patriot, Hatriot, has gone to jail, or will go to jail. That's a pretty big deal. On a related note, from late Friday, a former Boston police canine officer pleaded guilty to 8 federal charges, admitted that he assaulted a Capitol police officer with a chair, okay? He was a former police officer himself. How many former law enforcement military have we got convicted for January 6th charges? I got to look that up. I have no idea, but it's a frighteningly large and unsurprisingly large number. And how about this? Nancy Mace, another terrible stain on her career. As of today, according to 3 sources familiar with the matter, Congresswoman Nancy Mace's entire Washington, D.C. staff has turned over since November 1st. That's 9 staffers in the span of a few short months, with all but one of those employees leaving on their own accord. Apparently, she's a real nightmare to work for and have to deal with. There's been a lot of good reporting on that. And a well-known, well-respected Washington journalist and reporter is no longer well-respected, at least. The Atlantic has cut ties with a prominent contributor, author, and political scientist, Yascha Mounk, who joined me on this show last year after a prominent and respected journalist herself has accused him of a horrible rape. The magazine announced this yesterday, and I've just reading about it. Bill Boyle, of course, had heard about it before it broke in the news and mentioned it to me, but pretty big news. The Atlantic's announcement issued on social media hours after Celeste Marcus is her name, accused Yasha Monk of raping her in her own post on Twitter. A lot more to learn and follow with that story. Yasha Monk has not posted on Twitter since January 7th, the same day that the Atlantic first received notice from Celeste Marcus making the allegation. So that was news that worth mentioning yesterday. A lot of people I know and respect were following that story. And of course, he'd been on the show. I don't know him. I've never met him. And that was the only time I think he was on, well, the podcast, but shocking and upsetting news. But the really biggest story yesterday dominated certainly political headlines and should every headline, because it affects all of us, is what's going on our southern border and with immigration policy and a deal for support for Ukraine and Israel. It's just a giant negotiation. It's so important. It affects millions of people around the world. And, well, now it's on life support because Donald Trump ordered it dead. That's right. Here's the headline at the Washington Post. Border for Ukraine deal on life support as GOP opposition mounts. House Speaker Mike Johnson calls it dead while GOP senators start to defect en masse ahead of a Wednesday vote. The $118 billion bill, which includes sweeping changes to the nation's asylum system and a mechanism to effectively shut down the border to most migrants when crossings are particularly high, was released after months of negotiations on Sunday night, after many of its Republican opponents had incorrectly labeled it as a boon for migrants. Following a closed-door meeting of Republican senators on Monday evening, the deal's chief Republican negotiator, Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma, said he believed Republicans would likely band together to block legislation on Wednesday and that he himself, the author of the bill, might vote against it. Did you hear me? The guy who is writing the bill is now going to vote against it because his dear leader told him to, because they don't want the border issue they're screaming about, saying it's an emergency, to be solved. They don't want it to be solved. They want it to remain a problem so that it can then be solved by the next guy. Don't give credit to this guy. Don't solve any problems because political credit could be won. First of all, what's in this bill? Let me just give you a little bit of a rundown, and then I'll get to the sound around all of this, some audio for you, and we'll get to my conversation with JL, of course. But the package is done. The bill has been written 370 pages, and it's $118 billion legislation. Again, co-authored by Republican Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma and Independent Senator Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona. Largely in line with, in addition to aid to Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan, the package overhauls the existing asylum system, increases border security, increases funding for deportation, and increases funding for detention centers. There's even some money for new border barriers and changes to the U.S. fight against fentanyl. NBC News reported that the agreement, quote, would be the most aggressive border security and migration overhaul bill in decades if it passes Congress. It would raise the standard to get to asylum, send any of those away who didn't qualify, and expedite cases for those who do. This is exactly what Republican officials said they wanted from the start. Legislation would also create some new pathways for legal immigration, which Republicans now also oppose, but by and large, Democrats have effectively now paid the Republicans their ransom. So are Republicans broadly supportive of the plan, Steve Bannon writes? No. In the Senate, Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has expressed support for the compromise, but several members of the conference, each of whom are closely aligned with Donald Trump, who spent weeks publicly and privately lobbying against the deal, have now condemned the agreement. In the House, meanwhile, the entire Republican leadership team categorically rejected the legislation almost immediately after its unveiling, declaring it would never even be considered in the lower house chamber. The phrase dead on arrival was ubiquitous in party circles. But what about the Senate Republicans who've been supportive of the effort? Like Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina, who's generally been an ally. He told the Washington Post, I, for one, think it's a mistake to send this bill to the House without a majority of the Republican conference. So in other words, Tom Tillis is supportive of the bill, but as far as he's concerned, it should have a majority of the minority in the chamber, which almost certainly is not going to happen. But what about Democrats? Steve Bannon asks at Maddow blog, read all about it. The White House Well, they're on board. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is on board as well, but two Senate Democrats, California's Alex Padilla and New Jersey's Bob Menendez, who should not be there, wasted little time in saying they really don't like the bill. And if they balk, Senate passage will become even more difficult, making House opposition a moot point. But for the sake of conversation, if the bill somehow passes Senate, what differences does it make if it's going to die at the hands of House GOP leaders? To hear Democrats tell it, the package would very likely pass the House if it were brought to the floor for a vote. With this in mind, we'll probably soon hear quite a bit in the coming days about a possible discharge petition, which would allow proponents to circumvent Republican leaders and force legislation onto the floor for an up or down vote. Is that realistic? Probably not. Last year, rank and file Republican members were so afraid to sign the discharge petition that they were willing to push the country closer to debt ceiling catastrophe. So it would only take a handful of House Republicans to break the ranks, but those members probably don't exist. They pursue anything else instead in the House? Mike Johnson has pushed a bill that would provide aid to Israel and do nothing else. Will that pass? Probably not. Most House Democrats see this as a bad faith scam, while far-right Republicans are balking at the fact that Republican leaders haven't even tried to pay for their new bill. So what's next? Senator Chuck Schumer likely to get the process rolling in earnest with a procedural vote on Wednesday. Read more about it from Steve Bannon at Matt Owl Blog. That's where I got a lot of that information. And now let's get to the audio, which is mostly around this issue. Don't worry, we'll end with jokes. Let's start with MSNBC's Stephanie Rule in the 11th hour last night had Yamiche Alcindor on to explain it, and I thought she does a perfect job, so I wanted to start with that.
Explain this to me. It sounds like Senate Republicans are set to block this bill on Wednesday. Here's what I do not get. They want to hold an impeachment vote for Mayorkas for enforcing bills that they don't like. And at the same time, they want to block an immigration bill that will solve some of those very same rules that they don't like.
Stephanie, it's a really, really tough situation to understand. But really, the bottom line here and the common denominator between what House Republicans are doing with trying to impeach DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas and what the Senate Republicans are now threatening to do, which is block a bill that they negotiated, is Donald Trump. We saw the former president now calling this border security bill that has been negotiated by Democrats and Republicans for weeks now a, quote, trap. This is really former President Donald Trump saying he doesn't want President Biden to have anything to sign that even looks like he's handling the issues at the border. And as a result, it keeps the crisis at the border as an issue in 2024. So you have Republicans who in some ways are really looking at Donald Trump for their cues for what to do next. And you have someone like Speaker Mike Johnson who's saying, I'm going to look at the bill, but within hours it's saying it's dead on arrival. So what you really see here is that this is a bill, even though it's the most conservative border security bill that we've seen in modern history, it's a bill that Republicans likely are not going to pass. And it's one that even Democrats are angry about, which tells you just how far Democrats went and President Biden went to try to give Republicans what they wanted in order to get something passed.
Okay.
Democrats gave up so much, and it really would have hurt them amongst the progressive base and anyone who thinks or cares about the immigration issue. Definitely. That's why you saw Senator Menendez and Senator Padilla both coming out against this bill, because it was too much in border security. It was too punitive. It was too challenging and difficult for people to come into this country legally. And the security measures were inhumane. Some people would even say they couldn't support it. But it wasn't bad enough. It wasn't punishing enough. Or most importantly, it would have gone a long way in solving the real problem at our border. And that is not what they want. They want it to remain a problem so they can raise money on it, so they can keep us divided. And that is happening right here in my own town right now. The big headline here is that we've got a big board meeting this week. This is why I also want to announce right now that I'll be hosting the Hangout on Wednesday this week instead of Thursday, because there's another school board meeting where people have raised issues around things that don't exist, and they don't want a solution either. They just want it to be a problem so they can take over the board. So the fight is back on here locally, and really causing me a lot of anguish and anxiety to have to deal with a hopefully minority of very loud people scare the hell out of their neighbors. But I got to be there for this one, and I hope if any of my friends and neighbors are listening, they will be too. It is what Joe Madison taught me to do, and so many others as well. Be the change that you want to see in the world, and we've got these people terrifying the rest of our neighbors around LGBT issues, the whole bathroom argument. That's just a little bit of what we're dealing with. It goes deeper. I'll talk about it at the Hangout. That'll be on Wednesday night this week. Wednesday at 8 p.m. I hope to see you there. Sorry for missing last week and now having to move this week. I hate to throw myself off, much less you and your schedule, but I do hope to see you on Wednesday to talk about this because I'm going to want to and frankly need to with you. But now getting back to that border bill. Sorry for the digression, but I hope you're still with me. Here's Jake Tapper talking to Senator James Lankford yesterday on CNN.
Here's a claim being circulated on Twitter or X by Elon Musk, who posted, quote, "The long-term goal of the so-called border security bill is enabling illegals to vote. It will do the total opposite of securing the border," unquote. Now, I know that Elon Musk is not an expert on illegal immigration or the border, but he has a huge megaphone.
He does.
Explain what he's talking about here. Is he wrong?
Well, I think he needs to go back to doing the 2 million Teslas that are currently being recalled right now to be able to focus in on that. No, it's not focused on trying to be able to get more illegals to vote. That's absurd in the process on it. It is against the law for anyone that is not a citizen of the United States to be able to vote in the United States in any federal election. That remains so. Obviously, we're not dealing with that.
All right, well, that was more about this horrific Elon Musk tweet that had to be addressed, and I'm glad that he addressed it that way. Republican Senator Lankford shitting all over Elon Musk. That's exactly what needs to be done, and I was shocked to see it, but he apparently can get away with it as the senator from Oklahoma. Here now is the outgoing senator from Utah, everybody's favorite Republican, Mitt Romney, unloading on Donald Trump for trying to kill the bipartisan immigration Ukraine bill because it might help President Biden politically. This is a pretty solid 37 seconds.
Oh, I think the border is a very important issue for Donald Trump, and the fact that he would communicate to Republican senators and congresspeople that he doesn't want us to solve the border problem because he wants to blame Biden for it is really appalling. But the reality is that we have a crisis at the border. The American people are suffering as a result of what's happening at the border, and someone running for president ought to try and get the problem solved, as opposed to saying, hey, save that problem. Don't solve it. Let me take credit for solving it later.
Perfectly said by Senator Mitt Romney. Too bad he's leaving, and Utah is going to elect Two-Face from the Batman world of DC Comics. That's probably going to be the nominee. And speaking of Two-Face, here is Nikki Haley, who loves to have it both ways, for and against Donald Trump, as she tries to get the nomination from him, which just won't happen. But she slammed MAGA Republicans for killing this immigration bill on Fox News yesterday.
And they should not leave D.C. until they get us a border bill. And no, we are not waiting until the general election to do this. And it's irresponsible to say that Congress has to wait until a general election because Trump is worried that he's going to lose. There's a lot of reasons we got to worry Trump's going to lose, but you don't sacrifice national security to do it.
There you go. Well said by Nikki Haley on Fox News. To Neil Cavuto, I'm sure that went over well for her as she received several death threats as a result just of those comments and that appearance. I just am guessing. He's a congressman right now, and he's running for Senate. Colin Allred, I don't know why I said it like that, but he was on MSNBC last night with Jen Psaki talking about Texas border communities bearing the brunt of the broken immigration system and slamming Ted Cruz, whose Senate seat he might just be able to win, which would be amazing. Listen to him.
Well, they usually don't come out and say it this explicitly, that they're just going to play politics. You know, for members of Congress, for representatives, we have a 2-year term, and we have a year left in our term. So what, are they not going to do anything for this whole last year of their term in Congress because Donald Trump has said that if they do anything productive, it'll help Joe Biden in his reelection? I mean, this is the exact opposite of why, folks like me get involved in public service. We're trying to actually solve problems, trying to actually help communities. In Texas, we are actually bearing the brunt of an increased number of migrants coming across the border, a record number in December. We do need to have a response to that. It doesn't, and to me, boiling this down to politics the way Ted Cruz does, the way we're seeing the speaker do, it's such a disservice to the folks that you are supposedly representing. Just don't run for office if that's what you want to do.
All right, there's a lot of really important commentary out there, much of which I was not able to capture in today's news segment or audio, so let me see it. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this issue at the Hangout, but just 2 more clips I wanted to play for you. First, the Vice President Kamala Harris. And you know what? I just can't find out where she was yesterday where she said this, but she was campaigning. She was on the campaign trail. I think she was in Nevada, but it's what she says in this powerful speech. Here is a portion of it.
President Biden and I are guided by a fundamental belief. We work for you, the American people, and every day we fight for you. Sadly, however, that is not true for everyone. Case in point, Donald Trump. Former President Trump has made clear time and time again, his fight is not for the people. He fights for himself. He openly talks about his intention to weaponize the Department of Justice. He openly says that he is, quote, proud that he overturned Roe v. Wade. Proud that he took the freedom of choice from millions of American women. For years, the former president has stoked the fires of hate and bigotry and racism and xenophobia for his own power and political gain. He accused immigrants of, quote, poisoning the blood of our country. And after neo-Nazis marched in Charlottesville, he said there were, quote, very fine people on both sides. The former president openly talks about his admiration for dictators and has vowed that he will be a dictator on day one. Understand what dictators do. Dictators put journalists in jail. Dictators suspend elections. Dictators take your rights. And as the great Maya Angelou once said, when someone tells you they are, believe them the first time. Well, the former president has told us who he is. And it is on us, then, to recognize profound threat he poses to our democracy and to our freedoms. And let us recognize there are extremists across our country who have been inspired, encouraged, and even cowered by the former president.
I mean, wow. That, well, I thought was as powerful of a commentary from any American leader that I have heard. Kamala Harris yesterday. There you go. All right. Now let's end on those laughs I promised you. Brought to you today by Jimmy Kimmel Live on ABC Monday night.
We have an exciting new twist in the case of Donald Trump and the missing classified documents. According to several witnesses, when the FBI executed that search warrant on Mar-a-Lago back in 2022, they may have missed a thing or two. Special counsel Jack Smith has learned about a possible hidden room off Trump's bedroom that wasn't searched. There was also a closet with a lock on it that they didn't open. Even though Eric kept banging on the door from the inside, they wouldn't. No one knows what was or is in that secret room. And it could be the room where Melania lives in a giant hourglass like Jasmine at the end of Aladdin. But Trump has not commented on that. He's got bigger fish to fry. He sat down with Maria Bartiromo of Fox Business yesterday to weigh in on a potential threat he seems to have just found out about.
It may be the most dangerous thing out there of anything because there's no real solution. The AI, as they call it, it is so scary.
The AI, as they call it, on the Google, they call it the AI. And Trump thinks AI stands for another indictment, so it is very scary.
There you go. All right, there it is. There's the laughs. Jimmy Kimmel, thank you very much. Thank you for making it this far. Wow, that was a half-hour opening and news update. Probably too much. Probably did too much, but I got it there. I wanted to have some context around the immigration issue for you and try my best to explain it, give you a bunch of different things to hear around it, and still there's so much more. We'll know more if there's a vote on Wednesday, tomorrow, which there will be a hangout, so I hope to see you there. All right, well, you know him, you love him. JLCauvin is going to be with us in Vegas, March 22nd, 23rd. You can see him this weekend in Florida in St. Pete Beach, Florida at Sunshine Comedy Club. Get tickets at JLCauvin.com. And of course, listen to his excellent podcasts, Rain on Your Parade and Making Podcasts Great Again. Hire him to do a cameo video for you personally, and one of his many impressions where he is better than almost anybody out there, certainly at Trump and many others. We talk a little bit of his new Cornel West, and just so good. I love talking to him. He is hilarious. He is smart. He is open-minded. He is honest, and he is a good friend of mine. JLCauvin.com, JL Comedy. Follow him, all the things. See him with us in Vegas. Let's do it. And I'm very excited that you're going to be with us on stage. It's going to be a real fun time. Are you looking forward to taking the train all the way across the country again?
I am, because it's like my annual test of will. How disturbed am I, and can I keep doing this? I'm looking forward to Vegas because I know Foreigner is at the Venetian the night before our show, so I may get myself a ticket to their tour. Feels like the last time, if only because I like the play on words.
Very cool. You're very good at choosing activities and finding things to do. Wherever you go in the country to do gigs, you really do make the best of it. You'll go to a museum, you'll go to a historic place, you'll go to a basketball game, or in this case, a concert. You go to a lot of concerts, so you'll have a fun time all the way out there. Why? We've never talked about it. Do you not? I'm sure you talk about everything. Your deal with planes, like just.
I don't talk about that, Pete. No, because you were like, you talk about everything. And I was like, that's off limits. I told you off mic. Never ask me about planes. No, I'm going to have to probably start getting back to flying later this year, especially if I start.
You said that last year.
Yeah, well, I'm blessed to have not found a job yet. So that gives me free time. And hey, everybody else got to be fun employed in 2020. Well, you know what? 2024 is my 2020. I plan on being on a ventilator and needing government assistance. That's really how I get down. Retro.
Wow. Okay. You're really throwback.
But I hate flying, and it becomes like it's not. But I used to do it a lot. But the longer I don't fly, the more anxious I get about it. And then I'm like, the Boeing Max planes
that didn't help
are like the gift that keeps giving.
Yeah.
Like I was working. I guess I shouldn't. Never mind.
Well, you'd be the last person to be sucked out, though, and you might not even fit out the door. I mean, like, what are you worried about? You'll get sucked up against the frame, and it'll just be like a cartoon because you're too big.
Right, and then the plane will repressurize itself. It's like, apparently the door's been sealed, the hatch has been sealed.
You'll save everybody. With your body.
And then we land, and they go, you have 5 minutes to live. Your entire back is gone.
How much of it is that you are 6'7" and it's really uncomfortable? How much of it is that you're afraid to die?
I'm afraid to die.
Yeah. Okay.
It's because I get the extra comfort seats.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Can I tell you what it really was?
Yeah.
I always disliked flying, but between 2008 and 2018, I did it a lot. And then the pandemic happened and there was nothing going on. So I had a few years off from flying just because there was nothing to do that involved flying. And then what made me extra anxious and maybe it was me searching for an excuse, but when all the people were getting in fights on airplanes, like 2021, everybody like, fuck you, I'm not doing that. You put a mask on. I was like, it's not that I'm nervous about somebody fighting me, but in terms of if you could pick anything to make me feel more tense during a flight, it's like MAGA dudes beating up flight attendants, like being like, okay. I definitely didn't want to have to intervene in a physical fight at 30,000 feet. I just wanted to sit and contemplatively pray for the next 5 to 6 hours.
I mean...
I'm not saying that was rational. I'm saying that actually, that thought of being masked on a plane with fights going on and being 30,000 feet in the air was like, it was like this self-perpetuating nightmare that I've had.
I guess I just don't you should be in the fights. You'll kick everybody's ass. We want you on the plane.
But it's like, this about anxiety, not about will I solve this? Will I?
You would win. You know you would save the plane.
And let me tell you something, and I just have to keep it real with the Stand Up with Pete Dominic audience.
Please.
The higher the percentage of attractive women on the plane, the more ass I will kick.
So you think that you would...
So if we're headed to L.A. or Vegas...
Right. Probably
there might not be a MAGA aggressor alive when we land. But if we're going to central Wisconsin, I don't know. That flight attendant had it coming.
Really fucking gross threshold you have. You are all disgusting. You literally look around the plane and you say, are these women going to have sex with me if I save their lives or not? That is a low-brow hero right there.
That's a great album title.
Lowbrow Hero, JLCauvin. All right, so you have been blogging again, and I love your writing as much as I love your podcast, as much as I love your comedy. You've got a lot of really funny videos that you're always cranking out, including a Cornel West one, which we'll have to...
That's the new one. I'm very happy with that one. I'm keeping... I put a little quick one out in public, but I figure... much like yourself, I got to figure out things to make, little perks for the Patreon loyalty.
Oh, I don't do that. Actually,
well, you got your weekly hangouts.
Well, that's a huge, but that's a given. Yeah, everybody gets that.
But I'm doing Cornel West breaking down each of the 10 Best Picture nominees.
I didn't realize. Have you made these yet? I only saw.
Yeah, I made all 10. The first 3 are up on my Patreon channel. I did Oppenheimer, Barbie, obviously, and then Poor Things, which is probably my favorite because, of course, Dr. West had a real problem with the fact that Poor Things didn't address the problems of the poor people. Pete Dominic, Brother Dominic, we didn't talk about the poor people. We talked about the Poor Things, starring Emma Stone. Sister Stone does a great job getting naked in the movie, but we have to talk about poor people because we're not doing anything about it, Brother Pete. We have to do something about it very quickly.
It's a great impression. I don't think Cornel West would say anyone does a great job getting naked. That sounds more like a JL thing, but
we've have to mix in comedy.
I understand comedy. I also, unlike a lot of people, according to you, but we did make fun of a lot of stand-up listeners. We were talking about your Cornel West, I think, at the Hangout. We did make fun of your horrific Cornel West goatee. It looks like like it's purposely bad. It looks like a sponge of some sort.
No, it is not purposely bad. I said what I do is I make sketch lemonade out of prop lemons.
Oh, okay.
Because I just ordered, I went on Amazon. It's the only thing I ever use Amazon for, because I don't use Amazon, is like props. Do you know what I mean? Like where it's just like, I need some obscure wig for cheap. And so I just typed in like Cornel West, and sort of like a Frederick Douglass store opened up. So that's why it's not completely accurate.
What? There's a Frederick...
No, I don't mean literally, but it was like definitely, this was like the algorithm was like, if anyone wants to dress up as Cornel West for Halloween, just send them to the gray-haired civil rights Afro section. So yeah, it's not good at all. The goatee was especially tough because it didn't have a lot of sticky stuff, but I did do a good gap in my teeth using eyeliner.
You did a great. You really committed as much as you possibly can to the costumes with all of the characters, all the people that you play. So let me ask you about your thoughts on Dave Chappelle winning. We'll get to politics in a second, but he's won again the Grammy for Best Comedy Album of the Year. You had a couple things to say about that. I don't know if you heard Christian's commentary on it last Friday.
And once again, for the 850th time, me and Christian Finnegan are on the side. I mean, I'm not even, I know I put out too much stuff anyway, but obviously we are on the same wavelength on a lot of things. And I said on my podcast like several weeks ago, and I wanted my guy Mike to make a clip out of it, and he never did. But I basically made the exact same point, which was just like Christian said, Dave Chappelle left Chappelle's show because he didn't like the way some of the audience was taking his jokes and turning into sort of he felt like it might be veering into anti-blackness, basically, in terms of how some people were taking it.
That was his interpretation, at least, and that's fair.
And that's what he said, and that was one of the things Chappelle said. If you take him at his word, that was one of the things he was uncomfortable with. And I said, and then Christian also said, I was basically like, where is that sympathy or empathy for other communities? Like, in other words, why don't you care how some of your audience takes trans material? Like, why is there no response? If you felt such a responsibility with your power in terms of black issues, why can't you appreciate that you wield substantial power with regard to other communities? So when you greenlight as a sort of a thought leader for the thoughtless, when you greenlight a sort of approach to speaking and treating a community a certain way, you now you're a comedian. I'm just a comedian. As a comedian, right. I gotta be free to speak my mind, Pete Diamond. I gotta be able to speak what I want. And if you try to tell me I can't say it, I'll say it 5 more times and win 5 Grammys. So he feels no responsibility and no power, as he keeps calling himself the GOAT when he's on stage.
That's rough.
How about wielding the cheesy Spider-Man line, with great power comes great responsibility, except when you want to insult communities that you don't care about.
Yeah.
And then it's free reign. Then you get to fall back on comedian, irreverent, free speech, it's not that he can't have a stronger sense of pride and concern for his own community. Let's not pretend like he has to be kind of equally concerned with every community. That's not human nature. You're going to care about your own a little bit more,
right?
But to not care, to pass on $50 million because you feel so strongly about how some white people are interpreting the Chappelle Show, and then to not give one solitary fuck how some of your jokes might impact another marginalized community, is like either so like myopic or such bullshit. Like, either he doesn't see it and somebody needs to talk with him, like somebody with a fan who's also concerned needs to talk to him, or he just doesn't give a shit, period. And that's just what it's going to be.
And that's very well said. And the other point I think Christian made was, like, the same people that don't like black folks, generally speaking,
right,
don't like trans people, which is not to give a pass to black and brown people who are anti-LGBT.
But they do sometimes like black people who speak down to other, like,
we always love that,
right? Who get to be their weapons.
Sure, no, I love like, women.
Use your historically maligned status as a shield, and a weapon that I can say, well, look, he said it. You don't have to take my racist word for it.
Yeah, we love women who uphold patriarchy and black folks who uphold racism.
Well, okay,
they get worse.
That first part I kind of do.
We love women.
I love Christina. Look at Christina. How hot is she? I just want her to be his VP because he's definitely going to objectify her a lot.
What do you think that he has done to his attractive lawyer, Alina Habba? Do you think he's made strong passes?
Well, they're the only kind of passes Donald Trump makes are strong ones.
Fair enough.
They say to me, sir, you make such strong passes. I said, I'm like John Stockton, very strong passes. I think she is, there's something wrong with her.
Sure.
I think I'm going to give Trump just a tiny amount of credit.
Oh, of course.
I think these trials are the one thing that make him scared enough or anxious enough that he stops thinking about rape momentarily.
That's the credit you're giving him?
He's about business during the trial. Like he's like, Alina, if I saw you at just a cocktail party, oh boy, you would not be having a good time. But since we're doing strong law, we're going to keep it very clean, very professional.
Strong law. Yeah, I don't agree with that. I'm sure that maybe for a moment or two he's angry, and then he looks over and goes, how you doing? Like, he gets distracted, even though his life is in the... I feel like it would be consensual. I think she has she has a real cult-like, please let me bear the son of our white power savior vibe. She's like Arab too. I think she's Iraqi American or something. Okay, so I said we need to steal the oil. We need to take the oil. Instead, we're going to take the harbors. What do you make of the whole Jon Carroll trial and award? You're a lawyer and you're in Trump's head. He's in yours. Yeah, I mean,
it felt. It's tough because I try to separate a little bit of my, oh boy, I hate Trump. I don't think this was I think this is $83 million for rape. Do you know what I mean? This is OJ going to jail for stealing his memorabilia back, set kind of penalty. I'm not saying he shouldn't pay substantial amount of money for defamation, but this felt like, yeah, this is not $83 million for defamation. If I'm being, you know what I mean? But
hold on a second. Let me understand what you're saying, because it's important to mention that he already lost this case and had to give $5 million to Jon Carroll for defamation.
Yeah.
And then he did it again. And so does that not make the penalty more legitimate in terms of even the financial award? Like, listen,
right.
you can't go around and furthermore, it's very specific, and I wonder how the law should see specifically people that are so impactful and powerful. Like, this guy can command armies, and in this case he can, whereas if it were me, how badly can I hurt somebody if I make a public statement? Like, he really has a history of destroying people. So I see what you're saying, that this is really more of a punishment for the actual rape, but maybe it's a punishment for all of the people whose reputations he's destroyed and who he's literally put in danger. I mean, he's instilled so much violence that has been carried out, and it feels like something's got to shut him up.
I'm not saying this feels unjust.
And there's no speech around defamation. Like, I know it's tough to prove and so on, but like when I say someone's got to shut him up, I mean, you can't keep doing this legally. You cannot.
Of course. It's like the civil version of contempt, where it's like, if you don't pay, even though you're only on trial for this little thing, if you don't listen to the judge, eventually they can just put you away until you listen. So I get it, and I'm not like, I was like, my initial reaction was, of course, like, yes, and then I was like, nah, that seems like a lot to be fair, but I'm. We'll see what happens, I guess, on appeal. They're appealing it, right? I believe.
Yeah, but I don't know. The legal analysis I've seen is that he's going to keep losing. He's going to keep spending money on lawyers, dragging all of these cases out. What do you make of the rest of the campaign so far? I mean, I feel like I haven't talked to you since he basically. I mean, Nikki Haley's still technically in it.
Yeah,
but eventually she'll fall in line with everybody else and support him, I guess.
And I love her line that I guess she thinks is a very slick political line, which is, I will support the Republican nominee because anything's better than a President Kamala Harris. And I'm sure that's like a line they cooked up to I don't know, win over what vote? The scared of black women vote. But the party is, and I think you had Ophira and Christian both on last week, and I think you talked about the Taylor Swift
conspiracy theories,
and it's over. Like, this is a point I made on my podcast a few weeks ago, that the subject was Donald Trump, and I said it's time to give up on MAGA people. And it's common for people to go, hey, you can't stop talking to your neighbor, or you can't, we still have a country. And I go, the only solution is to outvote and continue to outvote and not forget that there is always this like underbelly ready to pounce when cynicism or laziness take over. But I think, I don't want to, at the risk of repeating 2016, I think they're deplorable. And if you're supporting Trump right now, there is no excuse. There is no redeemable. There is, you are a bad person.
He's going to stop he's going to stop the invasion at the border. People believe there's an invasion. They're very scared, and he will stop it. And Biden is allowing them to come in because they become Democratic voters, as Elon Musk just parodied.
And it's, I mean, you look at.
People believe that, though. I'm saying people believe that. You have no compassion for people who believe that? They're scared of the invasion?
No, because
you're not scared of the invasion.
There are people who are like, there becomes a level of susceptibility where I go, you have to have an open heart to these kind of bigoted fever dreams. Like, you don't just, I won't wake up tomorrow. Like, hey, I have come to understand, obviously, that the border is like, there's a lot of factors going into it, but it's a disaster situation. There's a lot of problems related to it. And I can't remember who you had on your show, if it was Michael Cohen or if it was someone else, but I believe it was your show. And like in the last month, let's say, saying like, it's time to have, or it might be Eric Siegel. Might have been Eric Siegel. It was one of the people who I like, kind of follow most closely from your inner circle of stand-up guests. And it might have been Eric Siegel who basically suggested like a primetime address. Might have been Michael Cohen, might have been Siegel, but a primetime address. And I think you were sort of like, well, what would that do exactly? And I think we are at this point where Biden, I don't care how old he is, how diminished he may be in terms of his charismatic communication skills. Not suggesting that he's mentally gone. I'm just saying he does speak slower. He is a little, use the bully pulpit. This is the issue. This is the issue you've got to move the independent voters on who could be moved. Where you take the issue, obviously Mike Johnson is going to sit there and do Trump's bidding and doesn't care about doing anything on this. So you use, how many White House addresses has Joe Biden done?
Right. Very few.
Right. Yeah. You raise this, I'm talking Oval Office, prime time, border, you acknowledge it, you give a tip of the hat to, I wrote this all on my Twitter yesterday, but you give a tip of the hat to, and I'd like to acknowledge the reasonable Republicans who've led on this issue, who have made it their a genuine issue they care about and not just a political talking point. Like you give like a tip of the hat to their leadership, like so you let it be known, like, hey, I'm on your side now, not the MAGA, not the build the wall, not the put up the barbed wire in Texas, regardless of what the Supreme Court says, and you give it nobody can accuse you of not taking it seriously if you have a primetime Oval Office address. You let everyone who bothers to watch, and maybe you'd have some more MAGA people watching, because how could Fox News and Newsmax not show you Oval Office, Biden on the border, even if they're anticipating him fucking it up? Maybe they'll show it because they think he's going to give some mealy-mouthed, weak liberal take on it. So you get those eyeballs. You make it clear, this is what we're prepared to do. We have worked, the Senate Republicans have worked with Senate Democrats. We have worked hard on this. We have a deal. The Republicans, the MAGA Republicans do not want to do this, not because it's not right, but because Donald Trump told them not to, because he wants to run on it. Now, this is an issue that needs to be addressed today, now, not in 8 months, not in a year and a half, now. So, tell your congressman, support this. This is real action. This isn't BS. I'm not kidding, Jack. And then you've shifted the tone and the conversation. Now you can argue about details, but you've made it clear it is MAGA House Republicans standing in the way. It is not me. It is not Democrats. It is a faction of the Republican Party who have been bothering me for years to do something on the border. Let's do it. God bless America and God bless our troops.
Yeah. You wrote this all up on Twitter. You said he should say, I'm telling you tonight, Jack. I don't know why you'd say that to the American people.
No, he went, that was me just having to get at least one humorous line in.
We are prepared to take strong bipartisan action to fix the border and our immigration problems. Not kidding around. So if you want solutions and bipartisan cooperation, a rare thing these days, call your congressman, tell him to stop playing games. Jack? Wow, he really keeps... And if they won't do what my administration, the U.S. Senate, and the people of this country won't do, then remind them in a stronger way in November 2024. Sleepy Joe is wide awake, bitches. Let's go, Jack. Yep. That's what you wrote.
No, that may be... I didn't want to get into it, too.
You want him to say, Sleepy Joe is wide awake, bitches? You want him to say that? I don't think that'll... I think everybody will just focus on that. Everybody will just they'll forget about immigration. Like he talked about himself in third person as Sleepy Joe.
But what if he did?
Bitches.
How great would it be if he just leaned towards the camera from behind the desk and said, "Sleepy Joe's wide awake"? It would be one of the greatest moments in pop culture political history.
He'd just be, Sleepy Joe's wide awake, and guess what? I'm your Huckleberry. Out.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
But, and I don't know if that I'm pretty sure that politicking line would be probably illegal or something. I forget if there's like some sort of campaigning from he wouldn't be campaigning for himself.
Oh,
but I think that might
remind them in a stronger way to vote. Yeah, he wouldn't do that in an Oval Office speech. Fair enough. But no, I think I still don't think, even with your version of his speech, that it makes enough of a difference. But, But I'm saying we already live in a country where 74 million people voted for Donald Trump. If those same people want to vote for Donald Trump again, they are not reachable. This is for the border people in a few states that really care about this and think that it's, I like Biden's stuff more than Trump, but the border is my number one thing. That if you can swing some people with strong border action and maybe get a couple of down ballot candidates who are fucking this up. Maybe a few of them lose if they don't get in line on this issue once it becomes clear. And then there's the also thing of, hey, maybe this scares enough people and you actually pass something, and then it's a win, which is the main thing Republicans are trying to deny Biden. Which is just it's the thing that's wrong with this country is that now a win much more often for Republicans than Democrats, but a win is not a win for the country. A win is a win for your political party. And if that aligns with the country's good, hooray. And if it doesn't, oh well, we choose political win over country. I like it. I like it a lot. What is this rant about the Star Spangled Banner being sang national anthem at sporting events?
I like to call it a blog, not a rant, but it's
sorry, it's a small upgrade. Yes, you've written a blog about it. You were recently at a basketball game and you had a bad experience of patriotism. Yeah, I caught patriotism C while I was at the game. No, but it was I noticed people yelling during the anthem, and this has been for years. And at hockey games, they're way worse. But I'm of the mind. What do you mean? I'm sorry. Oh, good. The phone rings.
The Red Cross. They want blood. Not today, Red Cross.
Tomorrow, I hope. What do you mean?
My point is the anthem. I was trying to make this a more base point with the blog, which was there are, you can talk to me about, racism in the song or in the missing third verse or who wrote it, or you can tell me about the military pays for these things to be played at certain events. I'm just saying, if you sit there and you watch the anthem get played, it is not respectful. It's not like people do not conduct themselves in a respectful manner. And when I go to a hockey game, especially, they're screaming, they're shouting, you're clapping halfway through the song. And, some of these people probably hate Colin Kaepernick for his disrespectful treatment of the anthem, which was to quietly kneel. Whereas I guess screaming things and let's fucking go Rangers is, I guess, lifting the spirits of our troops. If you scream that at a Rangers game, I don't know. It just feels like a farce at this point. Like, I stand for it, and I'm not inclined to protest or not. I'm just like, well, I'm here. I'll do it. But every time I do it, I just go, it's a farce now. It's so performative and so like, I made the point of if they did this at a concert or if I did this at a stand-up show, everybody'd be like, what are you doing? And I'd be like, do you see, just doing it for years at sporting events does not actually make it make sense. And it certainly doesn't make the audience respect it anymore.
I would argue that it brings people together.
But it's
a unifying experience, just like the Pledge of Allegiance or the Our Father.
Well, and here's what I would say. My only caveat, which I almost wanted to write in there, was I am curious to go to sort of a self-proclaimed, if I went to see a game near a military base in Texas, would it be different, or would it be a lot of good old boys going, woo, woo, yeah, America? And I'm like, but are we standing honoring our flag with our hats off, or are we having like a political rally? Like, what is the point here? Honestly, what is the point? This isn't even some woke, master's degree program thesis on why we should get rid of the anthem. It's just like, I don't know. I've been to enough games where I go, this seems absurd.
I'm the best is at my daughter's like 8th grade and then high school graduation. It was like an outdoor, like minor league baseball, thousands of people there, 3,000 family members there, whatever, big school. And they do the national anthem. And I don't know if it's most, but a lot of the black folks don't stand up. And this is at a school graduation. And it is, for me, the best part. Because those ceremonies are pretty boring. But when you watch the white people looking at them, that to me, I don't love, the conflict and the awfulness of it all, but there's a real entertaining quality about how angry and how ignorant they are as to why the black folks might not be standing for the national anthem.
Yeah,
they are so mad. How dare you not pay respect for this country? People died for that flag. The black guys, like, very good.
Yeah, it's never going away.
Yeah.
Like that, I'm certain of, and I kind of acknowledge that in the post. I'm like, this isn't going away because it will become, the latest Republican feelings matter event. You know what I mean? Like, facts don't care about your feelings. If they're liberal, if you're a progressive. But if you're a conservative, your feelings are enough to drive an entire national agenda. And, if you got rid of...
well said.
Yeah, if you got rid of... I mean, Donald Trump is the manifestation of broken white people, of white failure. He is the avenging angel for sad, broken white people, where you go, you know what? I'm tired of not getting things. And here's finally a guy who has everything I want: hot women, money, no filter, he doesn't have to worry about HR telling him that
nobody tells him what to do. Nobody.
He is
the boss of bosses.
Yeah, he is their fantasy come true. And I think he probably understands, that is one of the things he definitely understands, that he can do no wrong, because the more wrong he does, the more he becomes a greater fantasy to them. When he sexually assaults a model, they're like, why can't I do that? Like when he says a racist thing to somebody and suffers no consequences, but if they say a racist thing, they might lose their job. They're like, no, why can't I be like him? Like, he is their fantasy. That is the strength of him. That is why, because if he can't be president, then they have to say, do you mean no white man can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, with no repercussions? That's not my country. That's what it's
make like, America great again, where we could. Yeah. Yeah, right. I used to be on used to be lineups of comedy clubs were mostly white guys. Most of the panels I were on TV is a lot of white people, and now, look where we are.
Yeah, and it's
all diffuse. We got to get, we got to get our people going again. Oh, sorry, I forgot who I was talking to. You're not one of us.
You have winter. It's winter. I'm as close as I'm going to be to your people. Not getting a lot of sun these months.
That's really well. I haven't heard it quite said that way. He's the avenger of broken white people. He's the hero of the broken white.
He is their last. He he is their last like Ron DeSantis can't be Trump because Ron DeSantis is a smart guy in the ways that the left will credit.
It also seems like Ron DeSantis' wife is allowed to speak and tell him things.
Right. And I think she speaks English.
Oh. Yeah, we don't like that.
Well, no, I'm saying that's another goal. Another goal is like Donald Trump is also like the world's greatest 90-day fiance participant.
Right.
Look at this hot chick that can't really speak the language. Isn't that the goal? You don't even have to tell her to shut up. She just shuts up because she doesn't understand. She just gets it when I say time for sex, foreign wife.
That's what he says.
That's the MAGA. That's the MAGA voters.
I know, it's just so weird that they think he calls her his foreign, like he says out loud, "Hey, foreign wife."
Only cucks learn their wife's names.
That is true. By the way, our next cuck meeting has been postponed.
It's just one of these. You know, I was telling at a Patreon thing. I had this thing that's going to be kind of the focus of a new bit. And it's along these lines where I say, white men have been the power center of this country for most of its existence. But there were little places, cultural pockets, where black people in particular were allowed to thrive, where, you know, sports, entertainment, culture. These were places where it was like, if you entertain us and you know your play, you can thrive, you can be wildly successful. And you know, I've been formulating this joke where I go, but if you look at the way culture is changing a little bit, like heavyweight boxing, there used to be a running joke about like, you know, white heavyweights being a thing of the past. The heavyweight champ of the world is a white guy, like an out of shape looking.
We're back, baby. Tyson, what's his name?
Tyson Fury.
Yeah. He does not look great.
The MVP of the NBA, not last year, but the consensus best player in the NBA right now is a non-ripped, lumbering white guy from Serbia.
Well, it doesn't hurt that he's 9'12". It's hard to beat.
No, but he's no taller than any of the other people at his position. He's just but I'm saying. So now you're talking about, and then you have Taylor Swift, kind of officially. You know, they went head to head, concert tours and movies, and Taylor Swift emerged as the clear number one pop star in the world, with Beyonce, as important as she is and as great as she is. You know, if there was a coach's poll, she'd have to be number 2 in the rankings. It's Taylor Swift's world. So I look at all these things, and I have other examples where I'm going, so if you're a white person and you're looking around, the world is still pretty much your oyster. You know, a little more equity in certain areas, but it's still you on top for the most part. But now you've managed to also get white guys dominating the spaces that you were for many years jealous and annoyed. Like you had to hang your hopes on Larry Bird every year. Like he was great, but it was also like, we got to root for Larry Bird. At least, you know, he's beat that Magic Johnson. God damn it. And now you've got MVPs. You've got the pop stars, all these areas that you forced black people to become great at because it was the only place you'd allow as a society for them to thrive. If you sit in 2024 looking at this landscape, where now you're actually starting to dominate cultural spaces as well as political and financial structures, and you still feel that Donald Trump needs to come and save the day, you're a pathetic racist piece of shit. That's the only verdict left. If you feel so like, God, we need Trump back, it's this idea, like, it's you, and he allows you to not blame you.
One of the things I notice a lot more of is these interracial couples on commercials and being kind of crowbarred into.
It is annoying because I know from firsthand experience that often interracial couples not as rosy as they seem in commercials.
You're talking about your parents.
Yeah.
And you don't.
And I respect.
If there were a commercial that was actually your parents in it, how would that sell the product, do you think?
Here's what it would be. We're watching the Knicks versus the Pacers playoffs. And my mom is going, God, I fucking hate Reggie Miller. And my dad looks at me and gives me a big, obvious wink and goes, whoa, he is such a good shooter. And he had this very regal accent. It's not, but I do a good impression of my dad. My brother has confirmed it. And my mom looking over at him going, "Oh, fuck you." And then my dad turning back to me laughing.
And that's a commercial for Toyota Corolla.
Toyota. Sorry.
Well,
televisions.
Last thing I want to ask you is about a recent episode of your great new podcast, the best work you've ever done, in my opinion. Outside of obviously your comedy, I mean, in terms of the podcast that you've done, I just really like it a lot. I always love your commentary on just about anything, and you're one of the few people I could just hear talk. But your producer Mike is real great too. But you talked about crime a couple episodes ago, and just give us a little preview. People should go listen to Rain on Your Parade wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to it. Write a review of it to help jail out, because it really is great. But what were your I didn't hear this one.
Well, crime was basically talking about, because at the time we recorded it, it was a couple of weeks after stats had been revealed that like homicides were going down across most of the country at a record rate. And then shoplifting, that was the whole thing for like a year or two.
Yeah, it was all bullshit, though.
It was all bullshit.
Yeah, the retail agency, industry lobbyist organization made all, and they've been forced to, but nobody will ever know the truth because, anyway.
People don't read. I mean, it was on the front of like the New York Times business section, but that's just woke leftist propaganda.
Right. And
so it was really about, I talked a little bit about my experience it started with talking about those stats and how, if people won't look at the data and won't be open to it and will only rely on their own narratives, we're fucked. Because like, if the information is right there and being reported, and you can enter your own place where you never have to hear that. And what's so crazy about that is, and I even had a friend on a tangential note, I had a friend who was like, he was an Obama-Trump voter. I met him after Trump's, 3 years after Trump was elected. But he had said something to me when I commented about the Biden economy kicking ass. And he goes, "Where was all this enthusiasm when the economy was good under Trump?" And then he sent me a text like a minute later and says, "Actually, you did acknowledge that the economy was doing well under Trump." And I said, that's the point. I don't lie. I don't like Trump. I think he's a terrible person and a horrible leader for this country. But I don't sit there and go, actually, the economy, you can't trust A, B, and C. No, there were large segments. Part of it was him juicing the economy through tax cuts and things. But you can't deny when the data was at times very good. I'm not going to sit there and go, actually, it's not good, when it was good. And the reason I bring that up is that you'd think people would want to say, oh, good, crime isn't as bad.
No.
Because I've been very worried. I've been like, hey, if you think that crime is out of control and you've just listened to your news and you're not trying to like have an agenda, but the people you trust with the news are telling you, shoplifting, murder, theft, they're all skyrocketing, you'd be okay to be nervous. But wouldn't you want that news if it was good? And the fact is, there's a lot of people who don't want that news. So that was the first part of the podcast, just talking about like stats. But then I talked about, making changes to law enforcement. And I used my own experience as a prosecutor where I said I was working in the Bronx. And 95% of the cases that came across my desk, most things were not super serious cases. I wasn't there long enough to be handling like tons of really weighty matters, but it was almost all Latino names coming across my desk. And so I would see these and just start to get frustrated. And part of that was because at the time I was dating a Puerto Rican woman and, just hanging out with her family and hanging out and hearing her stories and getting to know people, you start to feel a little bit, you start to have an affinity and a kind of connection where you start going, I'm just giving you like my inner monologue.
Yeah.
You start to have these thoughts of like, what the fuck is wrong with these people?
Sure.
Now that's not something I'm saying. And the thing is, being from my background, my education, my cultural experience, I'm able to sort of check myself. Like I was able to sort of, I didn't need to go to a session with a HR person or have a retraining program. But I'm
you're self-aware enough to check in with your own where you find yourself being biased, and you're also curious enough to get to the bottom of why that might be. I had similar issues around some of the gay men that I knew that I started to think were almost like more perverted and more sexual than straight men. And I remember correcting myself because I finally realized, I was like, oh, no, they're not. It's just women don't hit on me. Like, a lot of gay men were hitting on me, and I was like, these guys are fucking creeps. And I was like, no, they're actually no different than straight men. It's just that I'm not the target of a straight man's advance, and women don't really hit on me. So, like, I had to kind of understand where that was coming from, which is what happens when you're immersed with a certain culture or sexual identity, whatever. You start to create all kinds of assumptions, but you then try to get to the bottom of that. And you,
I had a previous example in my life. My uncle taught special ed in some rough South Bronx neighborhoods for like 20 years. And he was, Kennedy Democrat, never voted Republican in his life, stopped listening to Don Imus when it got too much, stopped going to his neighborhood bar at a certain age when, there was just too much racism around from his fellow older Irish compadres. Cheers, where everyone knows your name and says it with a hard R. But I could see him sometimes the way he would talk about parents at his school. They wouldn't show up to parent-teacher conference. Now, as I learned as I got older, well, sometimes that can be you can't find childcare. You're working a second job. In some cases, it is you don't care. Like, let's not act like there aren't neglectful parents, but there's also just as much, if not greater chance that it's parents overworked or unable to prioritize a parent, paying the rent. Yes. Is more important.
There's
than
a million reasons. Yes.
But what I'm saying is, from my uncle's perspective, he's emotionally invested. He's in it every day. So when he cares about some kids and then goes to parent-teacher conference for 20 kids and like 3 total parents show up, and that happens year after year, he wasn't necessarily checking in, and he was a baby boomer kid. He's an Irish baby boomer from the Bronx. He's not necessarily doing all the check-ins of like, hey, he's responding emotionally. And some of that is born out of caring. It's not just these people. It's like, well, these kids I care about. What the fuck is with the parents? That's what's happening in the community. This is why there's so many problems. I don't think that's stemming from a Fox News cynicism. It's stemming from an emotional concern that isn't being checked by intellectual sort of counterbalances. But my point is, I had those. I was able to check that. And I thought, when you see how cops respond, and I said, some cops go in because some cops join the force and they're pieces of shit. Some cops can become pieces of shit. They don't go in as machismo racists no, they think it's a good job, a valuable job, a good career, helping the community. But there's so many things. Rockland County you're in, all these cops get to live wherever they want, and they cluster in their own communities. None of them live in their own precincts. So it becomes an us versus them. That I'm sure would require a fight with whoever Pat Lynch's replacement is, to fight for like, now if you want to be a cop, you've got to live in the borough at least. You've got to live in the same borough that you police, so that you make a connection with the community. Well, they'll fight that tooth and nail because it's an us versus them siege mentality. That it doesn't just start that way, but it cultivates that way. And I also talked about retraining. I said, what about retraining? People roll their eyes, I think, on both sides when you hear about retraining, because one side probably thinks it's woke garbage, and the other half thinks, they think it's woke garbage. They're not going to do anything. Right. They're not going to take it seriously.
Police, don't have to tell me.
But there are things like, there's so many things that the police department, I feel, has done that it's always going to be an issue, but they don't help it. Like, instead of 4 years of college, 2 years of college. I know that may not seem like a big deal, and college is kind of maligned in many ways, but you know what? Increased socialization and diverse interactions
there's so many
through those developing years is more important. sending a 40-year-old to diversity training when he's, beating up a black teenager is not going to have the same impact as him being in school and socializing during those formative years.
Yep.
Making cops live in at least the borough they police.
Yeah.
If not the precinct, because of course, if you have a salary and you work in like the toughest, worst neighborhood in the Bronx, you're not going to want to live there. I understand that. But there's so many things we just, it is such a self-fulfilling prophecy that it becomes an us versus them thing. And I just think there needs to be a wholesale, this isn't a defund the police. This is, I wish I could come up with a pithy phrase, but how you recruit, how you train, the requirements needed to be a cop. Maybe it's time that being a cop is actually like being a teacher.
Now, well, that's never going to happen, but I do appreciate your pipe dream, and it would be amazing, and other countries absolutely have different standards and different ideas. But, I mean, the bottom line is it's one thing to educate and pay cops differently, but you have to have an entirely different system where you don't have police officers with guns that aren't well enough trained in de-escalation techniques and tactics, responding to somebody who's got a mental illness or autism. You have social workers doing that. Don't put a cop in a social worker's job or have them go with them. There's all kinds of different protocols and procedures that we can do and implement. But, it's always hard for me to talk about police reform because they have so much power in every single community in America. The PBA runs roughshod over many communities, I should say, over a lot of, potential community activists. People don't want to die on that hill to fight with the police.
And one of the things I said in that episode, if people go listen to it, that it's kind of funny, but I stand by it. I go, much like Trump voters, where it's like we are both the most powerful, important group of people. Also, we are the most victimized, and please help us and stop these people from hurting us. Cops have this sort of, we do the toughest job. We got the toughest job. But if you don't show us the amount of respect and care that we demand, we might just not do it. And I go, you can't have it both ways. You can't have it. It is a tough job. And part of the toughness of that job is not giving into your fear every time you feel apprehension or tension, and not complaining when not everybody is a fan of yours. Like, that's what makes it tough. You can't ask for the things that make it a tough job to be removed and then simultaneously claim to have this incredibly tough job that nobody appreciates. Like, the toughness comes from the occasionally thankless nature of it.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's why cops get respect, is because there's a vision of them protecking us.
I don't think, maybe I misunderstood you. There's nothing thankless about being a police officer. They get all the benefits society could possibly give to them.
No, but what I'm saying
they
is
get ceremonies for everything: graduation, death, promotion, the benefits.
I'm saying the minute a citizen doesn't accord that respect, or the minute there's a protest, it's like, well, fuck it, I'm not doing this. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm saying the minute somebody has a protest for George Floyd, and you're sitting there going, cops are under attack, we're going to make less arrests, we're gonna have a work slowdown. Like, that's the tough part. That's part of the tough part of the job, is that not everybody's going to like you, and that your actions will have consequences. But if you immediately then go, well, we're going to have a work slowdown, we're going to make fewer arrests, there's going to be possibly an uptick in crime because we don't feel appreciated enough. What the fuck is that? That's sort of my point. No, of course, I get the honors and the ceremonies. Like, I'm just saying, and then the minute, something isn't to their liking, you have what's his name? Lynch? Ed Lynch? What was his name?
PBA president?
Yeah, that asshole.
Yeah. Well,
Patrick Lynch.
Yeah, I think you have to be Irish. Full Irish.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. All well said. I took up too much of your time. I realize we've been talking for almost an hour, and I love it. I could talk to you forever, man. I'm really always happy. I'm so happy that you're going to be in Vegas. We're going to have a great time, and a lot of people are excited to meet you. Don't go anywhere. I have to talk.
Okay.
Say bye to the people, though.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening.
Plug dates? Should I plug them on the way?
Sure. This week I'm in St. Pete. I'm at your beach in Florida.
Oh, yeah, it's mine.
Just outside of St. Petersburg, Florida. I'll be doing shows Friday and Saturday. All that's on my website. Obviously, we got Las Vegas in March, and I'm in Washington, D.C. in June. So all those ticket links are on my website, as well as Patreon, link to the new special, links to Rain on Your Parade, etc. So just go check out JLComedy.com.
Thank you very much for joining me. As always, you are the best, and I'll talk to you soon. We all will. All right, there he goes, JLCauvin. Are you still here with me, bumblebees? Hello. Hi. Thank you for making it through the end of the show. I know that was a long one. I hope it was enjoyable to spend time with us today. It's always means a lot to me that you're there, and I put a lot into it, obviously, and it'd be lonely here in the shed. But I always think about you bumblebees here at the end. So thank you. I hope to see you guys in Vegas. If you're not supporting the pod, I forgot to mention that everybody still listening probably is. But if you're not, hey, you should join. You should join our community and sign up. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. All right, that's it. That's all I've got. Jon Carroll taking us out.
Keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. We got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. Alright, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to know, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.